So hopefully you guys are seeing the NotebookLM Lesson Lab screen. The link is in the chat to get into the presentation. And the short link, I'll just read it out loud for people in the recording. It's go.ncdpi.gov/NotebookLM, all lowercase. So, and it'll be in the chat for everybody, but also we'll repeat it several times to make sure that people get that. And this is one of my favorite quotes. I read this in something that Google published back when NotebookLM first came out. Is one of their main sort of goals with NotebookLM was to go from information to insight and ultimately to action, to get the information out of our AI and into our hands so that we can do something with it, right? And one of my analogies when I hear about worrying about whether or not AI is going to just ruin our ability to think and do everything for us, except for basically the laundry, which I'm still waiting for, is that just because we have cars, right, doesn't mean that I don't, and I take my car to go to Food Lion or the grocery store, doesn't mean that I don't still know how to walk, right? So we use technology for the things that technology is good for so that we can get back to doing things that humans need to be doing. So that's kind of my overriding, thing that I keep in mind about AI is what can I use these tools for so that I can get busy doing the things that I need to do as a human. So welcome everybody to this webinar on NotebookLM, and we're going to just go ahead and get started. So check the chat. The link is in there to the presentation, and the goal today is to explore some of NotebookLM's features, and then to do a quick overview of how to use it, and then to dig right into some use cases and how, from classroom uses and using it to create resources and lessons to some administrative uses, and then even some policy-oriented uses for districts. I've got some things I'm going to call index documents where they have prompt banks set up, and then also some collaboration and sharing too. So my name is Stacy Lovedahl, and I work for NCDPI's Digital Teaching and Learning Office, and I'm the Western consultant for the Western region of the state. And my information is down there. And this is completely off task, so those are my little Easter eggs. Okay. So if you would, on this third page of the slide deck, go over here to our NotebookLM Padlet. And this has been around for a while, so you'll notice that there are some things in there already. So it's a little bit of a resource Padlet. But also I'd like us to do some introductions in column 1, and then also take that quick poll that is over there in column 2. So click on this link right here, and we can also drop the link into the Padlet, or pardon me, into the chat if that's a little bit easier for you. And just put your name, your role or your title, and where you're joining from. There are a lot of people jumping in, so this is awesome. And then also one word for to describe how you're feeling today, since it's the middle of June. And where a lot of us are wrapping up the school year, have been out for a minute, and then also what your experience is with NotebookLM to get a feel for that. And I'll stop talking for just a minute to give everybody a chance to think. I don't know if you can hear that, but there are people chopping down trees outside my house. Of course, they showed up right at
hear it, Stacy.
a 3:15. Thanks, I'm glad. Okay, I'm going to jump over to this Padlet and see how it's going. Excited about summer. Glad to hear that, Connie. People here from Gaston County. School librarian Christy, nice to see you. From Charlotte, Colleen, great to see you from Wayne County. Love your emoji or your Bitmoji there. Hi, Kelly. I love seeing everybody from everywhere. Okay, this is awesome. Thank you for posting. Love this. Hi, Lila. I'm emailing you in just a second. Hi, Jen. Great to see you. Okay, and then here we've got 6 votes here in the poll. There's a little bit of lag in the poll. I'll click the results in just a second. Amy, great to see you from Wisconsin. That's awesome. There we go. So we're going to jump back into this Padlet back and forth during the session too. There are columns here for sharing resources that can be helpful in the different use cases. So that's in column 3. This 4th column here, what do you notice or wonder about NotebookLM? So if you have questions along the way, feel free to put them directly in the chat. So I'll definitely check the chat along the way too. And Vera and Lindsay are also monitoring the chat. So if I get going and something pops up, we'll check in there, but you can also post your questions in the Padlet as well, and we'll check back in there. And then there are 2 other columns for resources to learn more about NotebookLM. And then there's this last column here for real world use cases where we're kind of collecting information, not just from the presentation, but then from others as well about how NotebookLM has been being used, or things that maybe you have noticed that you would like to share about how you're using NotebookLM. So feel free to add your information to this last column and share that for others to collaborate with. So we've got 15 votes here. So I am going to click on this column here and show our poll results and see what we've got. So we have a pretty good mix. So we have some people who are obsessed, guilty, definitely. Some people, about 53% who have tried it but are still learning. So hopefully you'll find some new tidbits here. And then about 30% where it's still new but really curious to learn more. So we'll have lots of things for you to try out during this session. So I'll check back in and see how this poll is going there. Okay, so jumping back over. Thank you guys for taking that poll. That gives me a good feel for the room. Okay, so a little bit of background on what is NotebookLM. So created by, a product by Google, right? So it's available in your consumer side, so you have access to it if you've got a personal Gmail account, but then also available in your enterprise or EDU account as well. So depending on if your district has turned it on or enabled it. And behind the scenes, it's powered by the Gemini AI, so real powerful AI behind the scenes doing the work. And if you look back to, kind of where did this idea come from, the engineers at Google were looking around kind of in the beginning and seeing that people were, digitally reading and asking questions and doing searches and researching and writing and all of these digital areas in all kinds of different spaces. And when AI kind of became available, they thought to themselves, well, why don't we put all of those things into one location, a notebook, and then add a really powerful AI to the mix so that you can have the power of AI to make connections, and then add our own data sources that we choose to also make connections between all of those things. So this enables this powerful AI, Gemini, to do all the things that an external AI can do, but based on the sources that you select. So NotebookLM can still summarize information, explain complex ideas, brainstorm, create products like lesson plans or action plans, all the things that an external AI or external access to Gemini can do. But it has the advantage of being based on the sources that you upload to the notebook. So this idea of uploading sources to NotebookLM is called source grounding. And the advantage of that is that it allows you to personalize the AI, and it reduces the risk of inaccuracies or hallucinations. It doesn't completely eliminate hallucinations, so you still have to check. And I know that when I look at things, even though I've uploaded my standard course of study or my pacing guide or things like that, and I read through the output, I'll still find mistakes. So it doesn't eliminate them 100% because no AI, based on the way AIs fundamentally work, they're still going to have inaccuracies, but it does reduce them. And it will cite your sources, so you can go back and see exactly where it gets the information, but it does reduce it. And then the other thing that you might also see is because it is looking at just the sources that you've uploaded, is that it might not be quite as creative as an external AI is going to be. Because if you're using Gemini externally, it's going to have all the information that it is scraped from the internet and put into the large language model, rather than just the sources that you've uploaded to NotebookLM. So there are some trade-offs to using NotebookLM, but you're going to see that accuracy and that ability to know exactly where your information is coming from has a lot of advantages as well. So with all of that background information, kind of out there, I'd like to just have us jump right into NotebookLM and take a look around. So for those of you who are new to it, go ahead and click on NotebookLM on this screen, or you can just open up a new tab and type in NotebookLM and click on the link that comes up and jump into your account. And we're going to take a look around and see all of the features of it and take a quick tour and start creating. Okay, and I am going to click on this and show you what that screen looks like. So the first thing that comes up is this big button that says Try NotebookLM. And if you open that up, and of course, I've created a bazillion notebooks, so you're going to see all of these tiles that show up, and NotebookLM kind of automatically gives it a little emoji to identify it, and sometimes they're super cute. It's based on this first source that uploads to the notebook, so sometimes you might want to be strategic about that so you can get an emoji that you like. And the first thing that you're going to do once you get into NotebookLM is click Create New. And when you do that, you'll encounter this first screen for uploading sources. And on that first screen right here in the center, you'll see Upload Sources. When you click that, it will show you your hard drive. Or if you're on the Chromebook, you're going to see the hard or your Google Drive. And so you'll go directly to your Google Drive. But if you're on a laptop, it'll show your hard drive. And that's really important because there are some documents where, especially PDFs or MP3s or MP4s, where you'll have to download them in order to upload them to NotebookLM. You'll also be able to upload Google Docs and Google Slides directly out of your Google Drive. You'll be able to add websites, the URL to a website or to a YouTube video to NotebookLM. You'll be able to open up just a box where you can paste in text. And then you can also, let me open that back up, be able to click on Discover Sources, which will take you to an open-ended box where you can type in a search query, and it'll take you out to the internet, and it'll look for sources and help you discover things directly to the internet from the internet, and let you add sources directly that way. So that's how you can get things directly into your notebook from there. So let me go back over here to this little screen and make sure I didn't skip over anything. So when you look at your notebook after you upload some sources, you're going to see three different panels. The first panel right here is where all of your sources will live. So that's your source panel once you add them. If you click this little add button right here, it'll get you back to that add screen. Or you can go straight back out over to the internet and discover additional sources to add. And all of the sources that you've uploaded will live right here. And you'll notice these little check boxes. You can either ask NotebookLM about all of your sources all at once, or you can uncheck them and just ask NotebookLM about one or two or three of them at a time. So you have a little bit of control over that. The center panel right here is where you'll see all of your chats. Every time you ask it a question down here in the prompt box, that information will show up over here. And you'll also have the ability to add additional notes. You'll see your audio overview right here. And then this really cool feature that we're going to look at in a second, the mind map, will show up right here. And then over here on the very right-hand side is your studio panel, where you'll see the ability to generate your audio overview or the podcast feature, which we're going to talk about in a sec. And then there are 4 pre-made prompts that come with every notebook: a study guide, a frequently asked questions, a timeline, and I'm going to get this out of the way, and your briefing doc. So when you click on that, it's kind of a pre-formatted prompt that'll generate an information or an action plan based on all of the sources that are over here in your source panel. So before I go on to the next section, I'm going to check over in the chat and make sure there aren't any questions. And I don't see any. And also over in the Padlet, and see if there's anything over in the Padlet. Just to check and make sure. And seeing no questions, I'm just going to jump back over here and continue on. Okay, so this screen is just to kind of give you a quick little, just a documentation. So if you're going back to this presentation in the future and you're thinking now, what did they say about, what are the sources? This just gives you a quick little overview of the types of sources over here on the left. And then in the source panel, just a couple of tidbits of information about what you can do with a source. Whenever you upload a source, the AI is going to automatically give you a quick little summary of it. You can rename it. You can remove your sources if you want to. And then if you do upload a YouTube video, it's kind of cool. It will let you view the YouTube video right there in the panel, in stream, and then it'll extract the transcript of it right there. And there's no limit to the size of the YouTube video or the length of the YouTube video that you can upload. So that's kind of a really cool feature. The audio overview over on the right-hand side, just to give you a quick little summary of the features of the audio overview or the podcast. It will generate an audio overview in over 50 languages right now. Some of the things that I've seen people do with it is to download the file and then re-upload it and get a transcript of the audio overview. So you have that ability. It'll download it in any of the languages that it's generated in. You can also share the file with students, the audio file with students, and then there's also a live interaction feature too, and we're going to look at that in just a sec. So let's look into a couple of use cases and see how this has been being used with some people. One of the limitations that we've run into with NotebookLM is that if I set up a notebook in my account, one of the things, I can share it with anybody inside either DPI, or if I work in a PSU, anybody inside my school district, or if I set up one in my personal account, I can share it with anybody else with a Gmail account. But one of the things that I can't do inside my school district is share it with somebody outside into another school district. That might be changing in the future, but right now there's no ability to share things with other people in another school district. So one of the ways that we have kind of gotten around that for right now is by setting up something that I'm referring to as an index or a list of sources in a Google Doc, so that we can see what the resources are that could go into a notebook. The other thing that an index doc kind of gives you the ability to do is provide a location to share prompt ideas and other guidance that might go along with that list of sources. So until sharing becomes a little bit easier in the enterprise and EDU accounts, this index of docs of sources is one of the things that that we've been doing. Now, there is, just to clarify, on the consumer accounts, you are able to share notebooks in your consumer side. So if I set up a notebook in my Gmail account, I can share my notebook with other Gmail users. So let's take a look at an example of a notebook LM index of resources, for example, for elementary science teachers. So if you go to slide 15 and click on this link right here, and one of the things we could do is pop that into the chat for people to make it easier to get to. You're going to see that this is a document that has a lot of information in it. It has all of the elementary science standards direct from DPI, and then K-12 instructional resources like the science and engineering practices, the K-12 probes that align to the essential standards, the matrix for science and engineering practices for the next gen science standards, all of the things that if you go to the Office of Academic Standards, they have been training the science teachers on for implementation of the new science standards. So if you're a science teacher and you have been attending the science trainings for the past couple of years in preparation for rolling out these science standards, all of this information has been presented in a webinar, has been, in all of these different trainings. And, it'd be great if you could remember all of that and could incorporate it into your science lessons. But we can also use AI to help us incorporate all of this into our standards, right? So what you can do is if you're an instructional coach, you could build a notebook that contains all of these things. Or if you're a fourth grade teacher, you might just incorporate just your fourth grade standards, and then all of the K-12 resources, and then the professional development slide decks, and jump over here and build a K-12, a K-5, or a fourth grade science notebook. Now, one of the limitations is this is my notebook, but at this time I can't share it with you. But you could use this index to build your own. So what I'm going to do is show you how that notebook would work. So I'm going to drag my notebook over here and show you how that looks. So here's a notebook that is built with, from the point of view of an instructional, from an instructional coach point of view. So it has all of the elementary science standards and then all of the other instructional resources in there. And you can see that when you click on one of the PDFs, it will give you a quick little summary. It will, right here, of what that source is. And then down below, it just extracts all the information directly out of the source. And then here in the center panel, it's ready for you to start asking it questions. And then over here on the right-hand side, we can create an audio overview. We have the pre-made prompts over here. And then you can start pinning notes as you start asking questions. So when you ask a question that you want to keep, that you like, you can pin a note and it will save it over here on the right-hand side. So for example, I asked it a question the other day about third grade plant investigations. about the structure and functions, about inquiry-based investigations for third grade students, about this specific science standard, and this was the answer it gave me. So if I go over here to my index, one of the things that we thought we would help people out with is how could we get started with some prompts for this notebook. So one starter prompt would be generate 3 inquiry-based investigations that align with, and you could insert whatever standard you wanted it to align with. And then each investigation should incorporate relevant science and engineering practices, include opportunities for student choice, follow the universal design for learning. So you can modify this prompt to suit your own purposes, and then copy it, and then jump over to your notebook. Now I'm going to close that up and then paste it in. And then as soon as you paste that in there, it's going to use all of this information over here on the left-hand side because we've included the science and engineering practices, we've included information about inquiry-based learning, we've included information about using the question formulation technique, we've included all of this information into this notebook so we can pull all of that information out. So, and then of course we'd go through and we'd read this. If we had any questions about it, NotebookLM is going to give you citations directly back to the source in the notebook so that you can check and make sure that you agree with exactly where it's getting that information from. So you've got that ability to double check exactly from the sources. Okay, any questions about that? Okay, another example of something that you can add to your index document, right, is, so we had one in here for science and engineering practices. We had a scenario for using claim evidence and reasoning related to standards. There's another one for using the question formulation technique and outlining that. So teachers would insert their grade level, their specific standards, so it would do that. And then one that we're really excited by is following the Office of Academic Standards specific process for unpacking a standard. A lot of external AIs will have a process and a tool for unpacking standards, but we were thinking that wouldn't it be nice if we had our North Carolina specific process for unpacking standards? And you can do this with NotebookLM or for any AI, right? You'd use this same kind of prompting process. So we have a process right here for unpacking a standard, and it follows North Carolina's guidelines. I've got a sentence in here for science specifically where it references the science and engineering practices because that would be specific to science. And you could delete that out if you're not a science teacher, and then you insert your specific North Carolina standard right here, and it would reference your exact the exact standards that you have uploaded into your notebook. All right, so I'm going to move on from that to another example. If there aren't any questions. So if you wanted to be more customized, you could go directly to the Science Hub and check where all of this information came from, because that's an elementary example, but you could check in here and get the complete Science Hub information for middle school standards and then the high school standards. Okay, another example for fourth grade social studies, for example. If you jump into this document, we've got another resource document where you can do something super similar. Really, really simple PDF for the fourth grade standards, the unpacking document, and then teachers could kind of customize it with some specifics with recordings that would go along with their standards, and then jump over to NotebookLM and upload that. And I'm going to open up that and drag this over here so you can see how cool that ends up being. So in this example, this is more of a real classroom specific example, right? You've got standards, you've got your unpacking, you've got some information really specific to maybe the topic that you're trying to teach that day. So in this case, it's state symbols. And you start asking it questions. You might generate a lesson plan related to this, or some readings related to this. You might or a podcast overview related to this, and then download it for students. So it's really, really simple. You could go directly to Discover Sources and pull in any resources specific to whatever the standards are. So really, really quick and easy. Once you've got your standards in there, it's really, really fast to add things right away. Next example or use case is creating a personalized hub for multilingual learners in the context of your MTSS system. So if you click on this document, we've got all of the resources that related to MTSS. So again, building the hub might take, I would say, when we did this from scratch in a workshop, it took about a half an hour for people to download all the information and then upload it into NotebookLM. Because all of the resources were compiled in one location. So we have the document, the PDFs for meeting the needs of English language learners, this California practice guide. So this was put together by the Community of Practice in the West for MLs and MTSS. We have this document from the Live Binder. So all of these resources were put together all in one spot to make it easy to build the notebook in the first place. So you would download all of those, and then on the following 4 pages of this document, we have some starter prompts for how you would start working with your notebook. So if you wanted to be real introductory, you would start with just understanding the MTSS framework in the context of multilingual learners. So we have some prompts here about what is the MTS framework and how does it support MLs? How does MTSS framework ensure equitable access and high quality instruction, specifically in the context of MLs? The second tab has some starter prompts for supporting MLs within the MTSS framework. So we have all of these, and you can see we tried to go through and say which of the sources in your document would you want to have turned on or turned off. So you could check some of them, but you could also uncheck some of them. So if you wanted to kind of focus your notebook a little bit more specifically on some of these prompts. So in this case, we decided we needed to maybe uncheck the California Practitioner's Guide because that was being a little bit too specific to make your prompts a little bit more specific to the questions we were asking. And then we have a prompt set 3 focusing specifically on data analysis. And then prompt set 4 was specifically on instructional strategies. So that was focused on MTSS and MLs. So the next one, and I realize I'm talking a lot, so if you guys have questions, please put them in the chat and stop me. Otherwise, I'm just going to be throwing some use cases at you and trying to make sure that I get it all in here before we hit 4:30. Okay, so the next one is related to integrating the literacy instruction standards into our content areas. And this is another area where we have done a lot of training, and the literacy instruction, we realize literacy is really important, and integrating it into our content area teaching is really important, but how do we make sure that we can do all of these things all the time? And AI is an area where it can definitely help. So if you click on this link, it takes you over to one of these index documents again, where it's got your standards in it, and you add the lists. Download this specifically and for your content area. So if you're the K2 span and you're building a K2 notebook, then add that into your K2 notebook, your 3.5, 6.8, 9.12, and then pulled out the scoops, not all of the scoops from the ELA department, but just the ones that were focused specifically on the literacy instruction standards. So add those in, and then add all of these specific documents in. And then if you're arts, if you're CTE, if you're ELA, so specifically choose the ones that fit the notebook that you are interested in creating. And then once you've got that notebook built, right, we've got some specific prompt sets that are focused on, just getting you started on integrating literacy into your content area. So same exact process. Okay, and then to further customize it, in addition to kind of that basic information, teachers would add their own teaching resources for a specific district or school. You might also add resources from your central office. You might add some specifics about your classroom or your student data, anonymized, of course, right? Specific intervention resources that you like to use in your district. So